All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 20 of The Bench. I am your host, Heddles, joined by Squishy and Growl, and we are here with episode 20, powered by Wowhead. I didn't expect it to make it this far, but here we are. How have you guys' week been so far?
20. Not only was there 20, but we haven't missed an episode, right? Didn't we even throw out like a bonus one or
We
whatever
doubled
when
up.
there's a patch?
We doubled up one week. Yeah, that was big.
We're kind of owning. Let's congratulations to us and to you guys for listening, I guess.
We also hit 10,000 subs on this YouTube channel.
Oh, okay, that was you guys.
Yeah, shout out to fans.
Well, I had Thanksgiving, but not really because up Canada Thanksgiving was about a month ago. So I had a chill week though. Not much going on in the WoW sphere, but overall I've been playing a lot of board games again, so that's been a ton of fun.
Am I alone in thinking I feel like there hasn't been like a lot to actually discuss in the WoW sphere over the past, I would say, month even? Like they announced, the player housing, but they really haven't said much about 11.1. I feel like I'm missing a lot of information as to what's going to go down with 11.1. There's no PTR either, which is a bit weird.
Well, I mean, that's that kind of low in the action, right? Where they announced everything, they gave us a hint, we kind of talked about it, and now there's this little wait, and then eventually they'll get stuff up on the PTR. People will be bored of live, and they'll be playing, and we'll get to see the dungeons and stuff. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a lull in the action right now for sure. I'm not even sure I've logged in this week so far. I think I opened my boxes, and that's it.
And
how are your boxes?
My priest actually got a Spy Masters.
Oh, let's go.
It's okay. It's not super good in M+, but it's something. I have still really bad trinkets.
So, are you done raiding? What's going on with your raid?
Yeah, so, all right. Well, the weekly update, which will no longer be the weekly update, it will be the last update, at least for this tier. So we had a talk, and basically, I it sounded like, okay, we got some new people. We're bringing them in. Our roster's finally fixed. We're going to start progressing. We'll maybe cut down the hours a little bit. Tuesday slows around. I show up to raid. We just have 18 people, and we're like, okay, like 2 people are missing. We end up like 19 manning the first boss while we're spamming in trade chat looking for a buyer for the first 4, hoping that someone comes back. So our 2 other people were somebody's friend who doesn't really know the raid, who just like pugs a couple of the early bosses, and then just nobody. And then eventually one of the people got on. It was just so bad. And then basically we get to Kaibeza, and we have people who don't know the fight as well, and we still have this person who's just like standing in, who has never even pulled the boss before, and they're like trying to like drop their portal and then just die at the start so that they don't get any more portals or move. And I basically just like, I can't do this anymore, like I'm done. And I basically put in my 2 seconds notice. I'm like, hey, I'm not like we're not even, I don't know, I'm done. So we're done rating this tier. It was a great effort. Maybe there will be more Growl rating adventures next year, but unfortunately that'll be the end. I have not pulled Mythic Queen a single time, and I don't plan to.
Do you want to raid? Like, are you enjoying raiding?
I think like there's some level of like wanting that accomplishment or commitment or doing something, like if I log in every week and I'm just wiping to Silken Court or wiping to Queen over and over and over again for just like nothing to like get other people their Spy Masters or like whatever, I don't like, I just don't really, I don't know, like I enjoyed the raid. Like if we just would have quit, before 1 pull of Silken Court, I would have enjoyed this raid. But like we just kept going, and we got owned by the roster boss. So I don't know, like it's hard for me to say. I think that's one of the difficulties of Mythic raiding is there's so many different degrees of skill and difficulty. Like a world first guild is literally like a league ahead of a guild that's in the top 20, which is a league ahead of the guild of like Hall of Fame, which is a league ahead of a guild that's like cutting edge. And it's like, unfortunately, like, not every guild is cut out to raid 12 hours a week and try and go for Hall of Fame or whatever. And yeah, I don't know, like it's hard to say that I didn't have fun. Like I had fun up until the point where it's like, the bosses are so tough that people are quitting and we're cycling players, and it makes it even harder. So I don't know. I'm calling it a break. Again, like I think the WoW culture is like if your guild stops raiding, it's dead, or like if you don't get cutting edge, you're dead, and then like everyone
Yeah.
quits. For me, I don't care. Like I'm excited for the next raid. I'll come back, but I don't know what's gonna be left there when I come back. But I just feel like it's not fair for me to slot out X number of hours each week and show up when other people won't. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
don't even have a point where there's 19 other people that are slotting out the same hours. And I'm just like sitting here, 15 minutes after raid starts, seeing if we can pull the boss with 19 people. That's
Yeah,
to me
that's
a lot of
frustrating.
the part that was not fun.
I mean, ultimately, it's a game too, and if it's not saving like something fun, you probably have something better that you could be doing with your time.
Like
Like classic.
hardcore classic, yeah.
Read my mind. I mean, I've definitely slowed down as well. Like for me, I log in, might do my weekly raids. I still do some weekly keys because I want to get that damn achievement, and that's it.
Oh,
That
which
is
achievement? Oh, you mean the
yeah.
that's fun?
I got the queen ring this week, so now I'm just a cloak, a Mythstrak cloak. Never seen a
Ooh,
Mythstrak cloak
nice.
in my life. So
Nice.
that's all I need.
I mean, I've just kind of been staying the course personally. It's like I log in, I do, I kill 4 of the bosses on Mythic. I try to get Spy Masters unsuccessfully on Heroic for my Evoker. Occasionally I'll do Mythic on my Druid, but then beyond that, it's kind of like I'll schedule time to do Mythic Plus with friends, or I'll get invited, and then beyond that, I'm kind of just like not logged in either.
Yeah, I think it was almost exactly as predicted or slightly better when I looked at, what would a season of Mythic Plus be like with no affixes. And I think like I don't know, I played it. It was really fun. I played a ton of hours. I don't know, it's hard to say. Like I didn't particularly think the dungeon pool was that bad, but I also don't think it was really that good. Maybe if there was some really banger dungeons in there, it would have kept hold of me and I would have kept playing a little bit or felt the need to keep going. But like I don't know, I feel like I, put in a lot of time. I accomplished what I want for this season. I'm kind of just vibing. I think that this isn't like me totally stopping, but I think because there's something to do in another game like Classic, I'm doing that. And then, whenever this gets boring in a couple weeks, then we'll jump back down to retail and go back into maintenance mode.
I mean, now that our season's kind of over, how do you guys feel about the season? They did a lot of changes this season with the fixes, dungeon rotation. I know the dungeon rotation was pretty hated when it was announced. Siege of Borealis, Necrotic Wake, a revamp of Grim Toll. Some people even hating Mists. Like, do you feel like that's improved over time?
Okay, so I think the systems and I think the system as a whole has actually improved. I think that the affixes are honestly better than I anticipated, especially whenever we first saw the first couple of iterations of like affix revamp that they were suggesting. I think that the affixes, have kind of done what they were supposed to for me. I will say I don't love the dungeon pool, but I don't think that the dungeon pool is the most egregious thing to me. I think that it's just kind of like the state of the game is not necessarily holding my attention as well as it has in the past. And it's nothing like very specific. It's not like, sometimes if you would quit, you would quit because of like hatred towards one thing. I feel like this is more apathy than hatred, where it's like, it's fine. I enjoy it whenever I log in, but I think that the game itself is just like not captivating my attention in the way it has in the past. But for the changes to the systems, like you're talking about, I think the changes that they made to the systems are actually pretty good. I think the only thing that I would even have a criticism of is I really don't like the dungeon pool, but
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if apathy is even a great word. Like, I guess it could be for you, but I had tons of fun while I was playing. Like, I think
I've been having fun
playing. Yeah,
but I think that like the longer the season has gone on, the more apathetic I get towards it. Right? Like, why are you not logged in right now playing? Why are you playing hardcore instead?
Well, I think it also has to do with the amount of time that you spent in WoW. Like I think your first couple Mythic Plus seasons, especially every time you sort of hit new highs, I think it really, really drives you to like keep going hard and like fighting for your leaderboard and like checking your Raider IO page and looking for what that other idiot priest is doing and like, oh, retime this key. And like, no matter where you're at, right? Whether you're, someone like me who's competing for the #1 world slot, or you're someone who's like, oh, I'm trying to be the #1 feral druid on my server, right? Everybody sort of has that level of like, whatever goal they're trying to accomplish. And we talked about a little bit last season how like, the shifting of difficulties kind of jumbled that a little bit. But I think think, after a while, after years and several expansions of that, you sort of lose that magic of like, eventually you get to a point where like, I play Mythic Plus to compete, but also just to like play with all my buds. And then like, as soon as I get a little bit, I don't know, like I think the affixes sort of artificially dragged out the season in terms of like, like this season we could literally play back to back to back to back to back, like every single week we could play and do high keys, whereas before it would be like, you would play a week and then it would be 2 possible weeks where you literally just can't even upgrade any of your keys and you're just sitting there waiting and waiting, and then finally the next week comes along. So I think that in terms of like raw number of keys done, I think this season is comparable to me for a lot of other seasons in terms of like, the whole season, that we've done. But because we could play every single day back to back, like, yeah, I don't really, I don't know. I won't remember the season poorly, or, you know what I mean? Like, I just think it's an unrealistic expectation to expect to be like, okay, you're logging in the game and doing keys at a world first level for 8 hours a day, every single day for 6 months straight, like, I don't know. I think like, I'm not negative on the game at all right now. I think the biggest thing that I'm negative on and I'm downer about is like the guild situation, but like that's just, Mythic rating being tough in the roster boss. And I don't even think that's really, something that I think there are some things that Blizzard could do better for Mythic rating, but that's definitely not me. So this graph, I'm interested. Hold on, I'm full screening this.
Dude, I got 36 days put in the Slash played so far for since expansion launch.
Good.
Which, I mean, that's a lot of time. Like, I think that's over over 8 hours a day or something fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like based on this graph from Reddit, like the trending line is going down. That's going to be natural.
That's normal.
Over the course of the expansion, it's not going down at an alarming rate. But I do think that like it almost looks like the myth track has kind of kept people engaged for a little longer. But now is about the time when people are starting to like holiday season coming up, Thanksgiving into Christmas. People are getting bored of the game. They're going to be playing other games with their friends. Their PoE 2's coming out next week.
HC came out. I'm pretty sure this is dead. Like, I'm pretty sure we're about to like fall off a cliff here after this 1.16. I think this is completely the end of the patch's life cycle. I think for the normal player who typically engages with retail is probably about right here.
I agree with that, and I think a lot of people are like that as well. I think the other thing as well, I can't find it, but the keys are remarkably skewed towards Miss, Arakara, and Dawnbreaker for weekly keys.
I mean, I believe that.
It is insane. Oh, I found it. It's on Reddit as well. Let me link it.
Yeah, link it and I'll pull it up.
And, I can't remember the last time I did a City of Threads. Or a Stone Vault, or a Siege. Those dungeons just aren't fun, and also don't drop good loot. So, and some of these are a lot quicker than others. I can get done a miss in 15 to 20 minutes just to wrap up a key, and the others I can't. So, I think that's something that they like. How much do you feel like they should actually consider timers in a season? Because for me, like, people are always going to gravitate towards the fastest things for completion purposes.
I think I guess I would be interested to see like longer term statistics, but I think this, especially for someone like you who's like a good player in good gear and you have your pickings of what keys you're doing for a weekly, you're always going to gravitate towards the easiest ones and the most chill. So I think that's something that's like pretty common. I would actually say the way I would describe the dungeons this season, I know this word is usually used negatively, but I would say it's like extremely mid. Like, I would say there's no dungeons that really stood out to me that were like very, very fun and interesting. But the one thing that I will say is I think that they did a very good job, and I'm hoping this isn't just a season 1 expansion thing and they continue doing this, of really ironing out a lot of the like pain points, unfair overlaps, like weird, different things that go like nothing. Like, I can't really think of anything in the dungeons that I can think of that's like really, really like negative fun. The closest thing I can think of is like the city like thing where you run around and get the eyes of the queen or whatever. Like, that's kind of not great. But I mean, like,
I think the beguilers in Grim Batol and the Fleshcrafter Cheese and Necrotic Wake, I think that those are the two that
I think Flushcrafter cheese is like a high key thing. I agree. I agree at a high key. There's definitely some issues, but I think there will always be.
Of course, yeah. Like I mean, that's like a personal complaint, not like a. I mean, I think that they should fix it because I think it's bad. But like, if they don't, I also understand, right?
Yeah. I mean, we also coming up in 2 weeks now is patch 1107, and there's also gonna be that ring, which realistically should be slightly better as of right now, if I recall correctly, than current max level rings.
Okay.
And if it's slightly better than that, Blizzard might toot it up again, and then it might be super biz for everyone. So who knows? But there'll be a small power gain for everybody there, which is kind of cool.
Dude, the class tuning stuff hit this week too, and it was kind of interesting. The only thing that I noticed is enhancement shaman players now do actually a noticeable amount less damage.
Yeah, I was watching Dorky do some keys, and there were enhancement shamans that were doing Dorky boomkin damage, which is not necessarily I think that's a fair thing.
So I don't think that they should. I actually think that they should be beating Moonkin most of the time. I do think that like that is a spec that is now a lot more in line with other specializations that we've seen.
I still think its single is quite high, if I recall correctly. And it feels crazy burst, but
it's also the best haste scaler. It's good. It's obviously very OP. I think it's a lot more in line with other specializations for Mythic Plus now, though.
Absolutely.
In other news, do you guys see this? Blizzard bans Mythic Plus levers. Intentional grief versus
Oh man! This came out a few days ago. This came out a few days ago, and I think me and Squishy had very similar first gut reactions. If you want to share your thoughts.
Okay, so
you want to go first? Okay.
Let's just read it real quick. So they said today we issued gameplay suspensions to players who intentionally left Mythic Plus groups a great many times in the War Within Season 1. This sort of behavior reaction was either without regard for the experience of their fellow players or in some cases even deliberately intending to harm others' experiences. This is detrimental to the community of players who strive to do their part in group content the vast majority of the time. We understand that the occasional abandoning runs will end up happening. Players can experience unexpected real-life emergencies, internet outages, or the group collectively just deciding to quit the run. Today, we suspended players who repeatedly and recklessly disrupted Mythic Plus groups. We will continue to keep an eye on groups in the future, and repeat offenders are subject to escalating penalties.
Okay, well, I'll start with my reaction to this. It was kind of just out of the blue. I feel like never have they said anything about this before. I feel like this is the first time that they've taken action on this, other than the, alleged auto report button bans that go out. So this was a pretty big surprise there. Their wording is definitely a very vague.
Yes.
Who intentionally left Mythic Plus groups a great many times. And realistically, this could mean 100. It could mean 500 or something crazy. But how many people, Teddles, you probably pug more than I do. How many groups have you got in where, what is this guy doing? The second the key is slammed, they just pull everything and leave the group?
I think that this is just trying to describe somebody who's actively griefing. I know personally 0 people who have actually gotten banned for this, and I suspect that you guys probably know similar. I leave a lot of groups, but we're leaving a lot of groups because the key's depleted, right? We're just the key's depleted, it is what it is. I guess I'm not even leaving the group. I guess I'm leaving the dungeon, which is maybe a little bit different than leaving the Mythic Plus group. I suspect this is worded like it's like an actual griefer, though, that you were saying, where the minute that the key starts or they see the first pull and how much damage people are doing, they're like, oh, I'm over this, and they just leave. And that, I feel like, I haven't seen that that hasn't happened to me personally ever. And I haven't seen it happen to somebody in a very long time.
Yeah, so there's, I would say, outside of the high key community, not us, this is by far the biggest complaint. The biggest thing that I hear about plugs is levers. And so as a, guy who has limited time or limited experience pugging keys, but also somebody who's, let's be honest, I've been around the internet a while. I can pick out red flags. I know a bad group or a toxic idiot, and I can get out when I see them. But not everybody does or has the time to select all that stuff. But either way, Levers has been a huge problem. And in general, I think if you're in a key and that key can be timed and you leave a key, you're shitty and you should be punished. Like, I think that's not acceptable behavior. And I think generally most people agree with that. I don't really think that's like you're going to get people arguing saying that you should be allowed to leave keys that can be timed. We're not talking about keys that are depleted or keys that are turbo ruined. We're just talking about keys, at least for me, right? Keys that can be timed. And personally, I don't really experience it that often. And to me, the biggest time that I experience it, and based off of some stuff that I've read, I think this is across the board, is when people sort of want to give like a screw you, where it's not necessarily like, hey, this key's over, but like, let's say someone's rude to you. Let's say you're a tank and someone's like kind of insulting your routes or whatever, or they're complaining. Let's say there's someone who's really bad and they kind of snuck into the group and you feel like, screw this guy. I'm not carrying him. I'm just leaving, even though you probably could. I think those are the biggest situations, right, where people leave. And the problem is like part of what makes Mythic Plus fun is that there's something on the line. You have a key, you have one shot in it, and it can be hard to get into groups too. And the biggest problem though is that not everyone has the same thing on the line, right? Like for example, let's say you're doing a 12, right? And for some people, getting that 12 key and getting into a 12 key can be very rare, and you might only get one or a handful of shots at that a week. Whereas other people, if you're somebody who has all-time 13s, you can very easily get into any 12 key you want and you have infinite shots, and it's not your key. So if you just, if some guy looks at you funny and you just want to say screw you and leave, you're not losing anything, whereas the other person in your group loses a lot, right? They lose one of their 3 shots. The biggest problem is, how does Blizzard police it, right? Like, how do they set a system in place to stop people from leaving keys? Because it's like, well, do they build a system where like 4 people can report one person? Obviously, that's very exploitable. Obviously they could spend a lot of man hours manually and automatically reviewing these logs or these keys to get the answers, but we all know they're not going to do that. And so I think, unfortunately, a lot of us longer term players sort of wrote off the idea of punishing leavers, where they're like, well, it would be great, right, if we could get out all the toxic people who are leaving keys to say screw you. That would be great, but there's just no system in place to do that. And I sort of expected when I saw this post that what it is sort of like Blizzard trying to pander a little bit and then basically saying, oh yeah, we know there's all these leavers and we're banning them, don't worry guys. Sort of like when the people who were exploiting the rogue damage bug, right? They're like, oh, we're taking action against these guys. And how, who actually got banned? How many of those people actually got action taken against, right? But I sort of expected this Blizzard post to just sort of be like, them trying to earn brownie points from the community and just saying something, even though they're probably not taking action from against like basically anybody except for like the nastiest offenders.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've seen in the community is just like, what does this exactly mean?
Yeah.
You have people in the community who are like, okay, so like if I leave, do I have a chance of getting banned now? Like we've wiped 3 times on the first pack of, like Grim Batol. Like this key is dead. Am I safe to leave? Like, and how do you target these people without, catching it's not red flags. What am I looking for here?
Extreme cases,
no, just
red
like
herrings or innocent people,
yeah,
okay,
something like that. Yeah.
How do you catch that?
False positives, probably.
False positives.
Right?
Thank you. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And that I think is something that's really difficult because you could have somebody that is intentionally griefing mid key, but if their tracking is if they're tracking people who are leaving in the first 5 minutes, that person will never be caught.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are tracking in the first 5 minutes, there is a very valid case, especially in the higher key you go, where once you use your loss, you use your cooldowns in the very first pull, it's gonna be a big pull, a necrotic wake or something, and then you just wipe and you wasted all your cooldowns and stuff. A lot of people are just like, well, this key's over, and then they might leave. So that would be a maybe more valid case of actually leaving there. And so I think a lot of people are scared about this detection system right now and what this might mean for the future.
Yeah.
Well, right. And how do you know if the wipe was mutual? So for example, let's say we go into a pug and we wipe in the first pull of Necrotic Wake, and then we're all in Discord. I'm not talking about a friend group, but just like a pug. you wipe in the first pull of Necrotic Wake, and then everyone uses their cooldowns, and we're just like, God dang it, this ain't it today. You guys want to just call it? Yeah, okay, let's walk out. And then, so who, you know what I mean? Like, that sure looks a whole lot like another key where, you wipe and everyone's like, no, guys, we can still do this. And then one person says, screw you, and leaves, right? Like, those two keys will look identical, right? There has to be someone who leaves first. There has to be something, you know what I mean? And like, are they looking at chat logs here? Like, are they just, are they only looking for extreme outliers? I don't know.
I think it's that.
I'm interested. Yeah.
I think it's the extreme outliers too, because here's the thing. Whenever they said we issued gameplay suspensions to players who intentionally left Mythic Plus groups a great many times in the War Within, I think that the lever that people get the most annoyed with is the person who, a wipe or a couple deaths happen, and that person is determined that the key is untimable. And that situation is actually not true. The key is actually still timable, but that person is left anyways, and they've made the key untimable. I think that is the lever that people actually get annoyed with the most by far, and not these other situations. But I think that the people that they're probably banning are the people who, the key is put in. I'll read about this occasionally on Reddit, and I haven't really experienced this person like for myself in the wild, but they put the key in, and that person immediately drops the group, and you're left like 4-manning a dungeon or something. You're just like, what is this shit? Like, I feel like that situation actually can happen to some people, but I think that those are probably the people who actually end up getting banned, not these people who are like making bad determinations as to whether or not the key is timeable, and the actual levers who annoy people the most.
That's what we think. That's what we think.
That's what I assume. That's what I assume
is
going on.
That's what we're assuming. But I'm sure there's a lot of people listening right now who think these guys don't know what they're talking about. There's a lot of shitheads in these groups, and I think this is a good segue to talk about this this post here I linked.
You see this?
Which maybe we'll throw these guys a bone here. This is a wonderful post that someone linked to me as part of the what is it, BattleNet forums or whatever.
Yeah.
So basically, I'll go over this post and we can maybe scroll through it. So this guy makes a post on BattleNet. This was yesterday or the day before?
1 day ago, yeah.
He basically says, "I've never been banned before ever. All of a sudden, I logged in and I'm banned for 7 days. I thought, like, generally you get a warning if you get a suspension. Something happens. I just logged in and I'm banned for 7 days." And a couple people are kind of wondering what's going on. I believe that there's some deleted posts in here that are missing because the context sort of changes.
Hold on. I felt okay. Yeah, I found it.
Okay.
One of the one of the posts is actually deleted. I guess but it was this guy replied to it, so we actually see it. I guess I get unbanned and stay in these groups that are awful and do nothing. I guess I just get unbanned and stay in these groups that are awful and do nothing so I don't get banned, I guess. I say that because only groups I leave are toxic people or people that absolutely are just dying over and over on trash and not going to time the key anyways.
So this post
isn't allowed.
Yeah, so this post is basically, we learn from this guy's post that this guy was very likely one of, actually there's one of these guys, right? Here's one of these guys that's been banned. And so then one of the MVPs of the forum or whatever quotes this thing, action taken to curb griefing against people. And so this is a guy, right, that everyone's talking about. This guy says he's basically leaving groups because his groups are, quote, awful and do nothing. And the only groups he leaves are toxic or people that are just dying over and over on trash and not going to time the key anyway, is what he says. And then if you keep scrolling down, there's another post under Tinker Train from him again. "I know they won't change, but still makes no sense they suspend accounts because you leave crap groups. I believe pugging 14 hours a day, you'll get a lot of bad groups, but they don't think so. I know one morning took 10 groups to get one to even complete a key." So is this guy just like he just leaves 9 groups in a row before he finally gets one? I don't know what they look at, but they need to look at more than just, they just left. They need to see how crap the groups are or what they may have said, abusive language, so and so. Which again, my opinion is, look, if you're playing with someone and they're, going off the handle, they're saying some racist stuff or some bad shit, you're like, I don't want to be a part of this, okay, that's one thing, right? That's not what I'm talking about. That's not, I think, what most people are talking about. And then as we go down, there's another post. I will have to. They basically suggest, okay, well then maybe you send an appeal, right? And then what makes the post amazing, Varacthrus comes in, who's one of the Blizzard customer support guys. We reviewed the issue. Compared to the data that our team provided, you have seemed to reach a threshold that they had for this action. Understand that this number wasn't small. So this, like, he's basically saying, no, you left a lot of keys. They understand an occasional leave, but there were scores that took that number beyond reasonable. You're welcome to appeal again, but I don't know if the outcome will be any different. So basically, a blue poster comes in and tells everybody, no, this guy's a toxic idiot. And so what does this guy do? 2 posts down, he said... He basically doubles down on his take of leaving groups repeatedly. He says, then they don't play their game to see that when you play 14 hours a day and leave 10 groups. So maybe these people do exist, Tunnels. This guy is just playing 14 hours a day, leaving keys all day.
It's not that they don't exist. I do feel like this is like an extreme scenario, though, right? Like, this is the type of person that you need to get banned, right? Like, this is the type of person that you need to be to get banned, where you're like, yeah, I left it. Dude, what's wrong with leaving 10 groups?
This post is a massive self-report, unfortunately.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
But also, like, have you ever, were you around during the League of Legends Light Smite era?
Yes.
Nope.
Dude, if you didn't know, so League of Legends has a report thing as well, and you have people who would, say I was unfairly banned or whatever, and there was a Riot dev who went by Riot Light, and he would respond to people's requests and publicly post and like tell them what they did in the comments for everybody to read, and oh my god, some of them were bad.
Dude, he was like, it was like, I got banned for nothing, and then Light would come in and be like, bro, you told this guy to kill himself 150 times. What do you mean you did nothing?
Yeah, it was. That's what this reminds me of. It's just like, this is the person that like Growl linked this to me like maybe a couple hours ago. Like, wow, okay, so this is a very real ban, and there are people out here that like it. But I feel like it. This shows that if you're just going out there and leaving a key halfway through because you wiped 3 times, you're gonna be fine.
I think.
Let me just go ahead. Sorry.
As I say, the situation in which you get banned, I feel like has to be extreme. Like, I feel no innocent person's getting caught in the crosshairs. It sounds like here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this in general, though, although we may disagree a little bit in terms of what we see in pugs, this is a big W, I think, for the average pugger who thinks that levers is a problem, right? Number one, this is proof that these people do exist and they're out there delusionally just being toxic, leaving keys all day, and that Blizzard system found them and gunned them down. So, even though that we maybe we do have a limited experience towards Mythic Plus, and you may experience these players more. This is a good sign. This is a good sign that not only, hey, maybe this is a real problem that's happening, and Blizzard is doing something to fix it. So I was kind of like, yeah, Blizzard's pandering, they're not doing anything. But when I saw this post, I'm like, okay, maybe they're onto something here.
So I actually agree that I think that levers and Mythic Plus are a problem. I don't know if actually Blizzard taking action and banning only the most extreme case of levers should necessarily be the solution. Now, this guy is a bonehead and sounds like he needs to be banned for like a week. But I think that maybe they could have actually put something in the game that would have been better in terms of moderating this specific situation, because I actually do tend to agree that I think that levers are a problem for Mythic Plus, but I wonder if like there would have been a solution that is better. But at the same point, occasionally abandoning runs does happen. Like there's a lot of issues trying to tell nuance between there's an emergency, internet outages, something like that. Like, why did the run get abandoned and whatnot? And that to me, I guess, is probably the reason that they didn't put it in the game. I do find it a bit strange that they're banning people. I think that to me is the only thing that I was a bit surprised about in the entire situation.
I mean, this is the first we've heard of this. They say they're going to keep an eye on groups in the future. I won't lie, I'm questioning that statement a little, but I think if they do manage to keep an eye on groups in the future, I think that would be really good, and just remind people that, hey, we're watching this, please don't leave an excessive amount of groups, I think is good for the game overall. The question is, are they actually going to do that, considering the number of things that they've kind of let slip this expansion after Blue Posts?
Have you played League of Legends lately, Bushy?
No.
So
No, only during the Tribunal days.
Even if you like leave a League of Legends game like now, you can be put in a couple of different things. First off, there's like a low priority queue if you're leaving too many games, where you're in like turbo hell. There's also like you get penalties, like you have to wait 15 minutes before you're able to. Like you have to sit out a 15-minute penalty before you're actually able to even enter the queue next time if you're like leaving a game. You also take like a full LP loss and stuff like that. And I feel like Riot in League of Legends actually does a pretty decent job of de-incentivizing you for just leaving a game altogether. And I wish that Mythic Plus had something similar to that, where it wasn't like you're getting banned, but you were heavily de-incentivized because either you got like low priority queue. The low priority queue is so funny to me. Or you got like the 15-minute suspension thing, or the next time you have to queue up and stuff. And you took like full LP from the lobby. It's like, you lose a ton of LP, by the way, if you like DC or anything like that.
Yeah. I
What if like sorry, you can go talk about League. I don't know anything about League.
No. I was gonna come back to WoW. So you.
So what I was gonna say is, what if somehow they could allow give pugs the option to create like a binding agreement at the start of the key? So, for example, if you're a group that's like, all right, we want to stick this out, we're trying to finish this key, we need the crests or whatever, like, you know, you have to stay in the key for X amount of time, or like, you know, whatever, or you're severely punished. So like all 5 members of the group agree to it before they go in, and then it's sort of like a built-in system, right? Whereas, you know, everybody basically agrees to it. And then if you're somebody who's like chain leaving keys or whatever, you're just never going to be in these groups. So like if you're somebody who is bothered heavily by people leaving keys, either because of crests or because of levers or whatever, you just play your keys like this. And then you know what I mean? And I know like Squishy has mentioned too, another alternative is like using secondary communities that are like vetted, where like, you know, you can't behave poorly, and then only grouping with those people. That's another like more community option. But
yeah,
I don't see why Blizzard, maybe they introduce a system where all 5 players agree that like, okay, we're sticking this out until, you know, some amount of time, and then like if you're leaving the dungeon before then, like you're just, you know,
what you're saying is
very heavily.
You want to implement surrender at 20.
An option to surrender at 20.
That's what I mean. You cannot surrender before a certain point, essentially.
Well, in a lot of I don't know how it works in other games, but when I played Dota or whatever, it was mandatory. Like if you queue into a game, you cannot surrender until a certain amount of time.
Yes.
If I remember, Han had surrender at 15, and then Dota does not let you surrender at all. You have to play out the
League
game
is
or
20.
you're punished.
League is 20.
And so I'm saying that you have an option. You don't have to every time you go into a key, but if all 5 group members agree that we're doing surrender at 20, if you leave the key before the 30-minute mark or AFK or get flagged or whatever, you're punished no matter what, whether it's a DC or emergency, because that's how it works in League too, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you DC in a League game because your power's out or whatever, you get minus a bunch of points, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's in theory, it shouldn't happen that often to the point where you get punished by it a lot. But yeah, I think that would be an interesting solution to the lever problem too, is allow all 5 of the group members to opt in at the start of the key.
I'm down. Like I think that it makes sense. I do. You could make an argument that, oh, then people would AFK and stuff like that. And I think that Blizzard would just have to put automated systems in to be able to flag if somebody's like sitting in the spawn, and if somebody's not actually hitting the mobs. Like in League, they auto detect if you're like actively just like, if you're AFK, but you've sat in the spawn. But if you sat in the spawn for too long, like you're flagged, and you still get the lever.
They have the ability to audit that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All 5 players agree that if you did it, then you're punished, right? So pretty easily they could add, because it's not like they need to do it in every single key, right? They only need to do it in the keys where all 5 players agreed, you know, whatever they want to call it. But I'm interested to hear what people think. Maybe drop your thoughts in the comment of an optional, like all 5 of the group members can agree to a heavy punishment if you leave the key at the start.
I think levers in LFG specifically is such an annoying problem, though.
Yeah. I mean, it comes from the mentality of my time is more worth it. Like, and this is clearly not going anywhere, so I'm just going to dip now and find a group that can. I I wouldn't be opposed to, but this is like my initial thoughts. I wouldn't be opposed to a for completion thing, like timer. Like we are doing this weekly no lever key. It is going to get complete. Like we are signing the contract. We are going to complete this key and going for it. But then again, like, what if your group can literally not complete the key? Like it is just that bad. You get walled on Surgeon Stitch Slash on week 1, and you have no spheres, and you're sitting there for 2 hours. Like,
Dude,
I mean, at some point, somebody's gonna accept the penalty, but like, there's a lot of things that they would need to figure out. I would love to see them do more in that aspect if they can find a way to do it, because I think that's like the number one concern this time with how like just pugging sucks this
Mhm.
season, and levers are rampant.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not opposed to Growl's idea.
I would love to turn on a completion system, and like whenever like try to push a key, somebody just turns it on to troll. And you're just like, wait, bro.
in your group, in your 5-man group, you just like we're like, hey, let's do this 15 missed homework key, and you just slam a 19 in, and then turn on the completion thing, and everyone's just stuck in there.
Oh shit! That would be one of the funniest things ever.
Yeah.
Just Grimbatol 17, and you just wanted to do it just to see the first full. You just turn it on.
All that leads to is just a mandatory 30-minute food break or something, you know?
Yep.
No, it would be your tank. What the fuck are you doing? You're an idiot.
Wow, that'd be interesting too. Because what if? Oh man, I might be cooking here.
Okay,
What if then when you do that and you get a lever in those keys, you can also maybe compensate them somehow, right? Like you make it so like if they left your key, they're heavily punished, but then like your key gets auto rerolled or whatever, right? Or like you add in that sort of key protection weird thing that people have been asking about too. I guess that's really easy to exploit though.
Okay,
all right. That one's back in the oven. But hopefully you see where I'm going with that, right? Is like maybe somehow you could give a little help to the key holder in that regard. If you have a key and you're like, we need to complete this because it's a Grimbatol and I do not want a freaking 11 Grimbatol. Well, okay, that person's key auto rerolls if you give up. Like if someone leaves, you reroll to a random new 11, even if you don't finish it because you agreed to finish it and your team ditched you.
Now, I think actually a good way of doing this, incentivizing the utilization of the completion system. We kind of talk about the call to arms bags occasionally as ways to incentivize people to play tank and healer, and I don't think it would work for that. But I do actually think it could work to incentivize people to use this like completion system more, right? If you actually got an incentive to be using it altogether, say you got a call to arms bag that contained augment runes, and
oh man, you got like 50% crest increase if you mark it as completion or something like that.
Something like that, yeah, exactly.
That or like I'm even thinking you can mark it as completion. The key cannot go up, but it also can't go down as long as you complete it.
Oh, I could be also down for it could not go down as well.
Could not go up, but cannot go down. Like
you got a lot of chefs in the kitchen. We got dishes everywhere.
Like
we are cooking
about it, right? You're just trying to do your weekly no levers. Like you kind of just run it for a bit, but then I think the thing with all these ideas that me, you guys, everyone kind of throws out is somebody can exploit the system in some way, and that's kind of the hard part. That I do this all the time. It's like, oh, that wouldn't be good because somebody can exploit the system, and then you'd have people doing this. Like, is it better than what we currently have?
Yes.
And the question is, we don't either know or it might be, but we really won't know unless we implement it. And so, like, if Blizzard actually sees levers as a problem, which it does seem like they are starting to now admit that, I think the community would very much like to see some action being taken, even if it ends up in a worse state. They can always come back to a previous system or try something new. I mean, that's kind of how we got to like the current gearing system of today. We had to go through a lot of shit to get here. We went through Titan forging, and
Affixes went through so many different iterations, and I feel like they clicked and they're good now.
So like, I'm kind of coming around to the idea that there are definitely, with every change that they make to a lever solution, there are going to be what ifs. Oh, if I do this, like someone smart could easily just, exploit it and stick in the group and grief this way and make somebody else take a lever penalty and whatever else. But maybe they just need to do it and see what happens. and see how it affects the game.
There's people that troll in every game. Like I think you're always like even in League of Legends where they have so many like measures to make sure that you're not griefing. They, if you're really trying to, you can actually just run down mid lane and do some real troll stuff, and you're like stealing your mid laner's farm and just like completely ruining the game, right?
Exactly.
You can always troll if you really want to. It's just like most people at that point, most people won't bother. A question that I had is this Blizzard's job? Because WoW is a primarily MMO and community-based game. Do we think that this is Blizzard's job to actually police this kind of thing? Because I think it's kind of an interesting question because this is mostly a social issue, right?
Yes and no. I think yes, it definitely is. The problem is just it's very difficult and like what's the way to do it? You know?
Yeah. I think
it also is Blizzard's job.
Like, running around being racist, you could say that's a social issue, but like, is it Blizzard? Like, absolutely, it's Blizzard's job to stop that, right? Like, I think it's the same here. Like, that is a lot easier to police, though.
It's them to it's on them to police it because anything that can be seen as different or wrong, if it's not policed, it will continue to fester and grow.
Yeah.
So if people see that, oh, like I'm looking out for me, other people are going to do it, but this kind of puts a stop in it. As we talked about with the exploits discussion, many episodes ago, the thing is they have to keep on top of it. And we'll see if that's the case down the road.
They have to make people afraid to leave keys. They have to make people afraid to exploit, right? Like under fear of penalty.
The exploit one hasn't been going well, but maybe this one will, because it affects more people too.
Okay. Well, this is the only guy that I've seen so far that's been banned. Any commenters know anybody who got banned from this?
Yeah.
Also, I kind of like. Do you know somebody who's been banned by this? What kind of a person are they in Mythic Plus generally? Do you like know what kind of a person they are in Mythic Plus? Because I feel like this has to be like to get banned for this. It feels like you have to be the most extreme type of person.
I mean, long ago, I used to do tribunal stuff for League of Legends. I saw some crap in those chat logs. Holy crap! I've seen some pretty dark things. I expect they're in every game.
Do you think Blizzard said enough with this? I feel like they actually. I feel like they said like a lot, but I also feel like they didn't say it like enough, right? Because it's like, how exactly are you even punishing these people? How are you figuring out who's excessively leaving a great many times?
They can't say that.
Yeah, I think they can't be that specific, but I would like maybe a slightly better clarification. For example, what constitutes a key that's okay to leave? What?
Oh,
if their only metric is they're just looking at how often you're leaving and they're just guessing that you're rage quitting a lot or whatever, like maybe that works. I don't know, but like what makes a key okay to leave? Is it if it's depleted 100%, if your team mutually agrees? I think that would be the most important clarification I'd like to see is them explain, they don't need to talk about the specifics or how they're detecting it or whatever, but like, some sort of rules that if you're playing, if you join a group in Group Finder and no one says anything and you stick the key in and then you're in, when is it okay to leave, basically?
Yeah. I think it's also just a little on the PR side. And I think it almost needed just to be a little more down to earth for people to like. We issued gameplay sessions to players who intentionally left Mythic Plus groups a great many times. I think you could probably just simplify that to like the top end of Mythic Plus leavers.
You're griefing, yeah.
Yeah, like the Mythic Plus griefers who left keys within or like who did majority of the stuff at the start. I think it could have just been a little more down to earth as to what this is actually targeting, to not make your community super scared about leaving, because there are many valid reasons for leaving. I think they tried to do that in like the third paragraph where it's like, here are some valid reasons for leaving, but they're like super general and leaves out the cases where I feel this key is dead, this other guy feels the key is dead, but this other tank continues to want to continue to pull. So
yeah, I agree. In other news, Saw an interesting community tweet by Jedith. He said, "My time spent logging into WoW has decreased by 70% the last few weeks. Don't think I've ever felt this bored/disconnected from it. Things that are ruining it for me. Class and spec is at an all-time low. He plays a Havoc Demon Hunter main. This is probably part of it. This means poor performance on all fronts, which is no fun for anyone. Pugging Mythic Plus has never been more of a struggle, not just because my spec, but due to the changes that they made to the system. Tank shortage, interrupt/stun change resulting in most pug groups disbanding early, then back in LFG for the next hour. No character progression left to chase. Only upgrades will come from Mythic Raid Vault, which my guild is not getting because we've extended on Mythic Silken Court for 4 weeks now. Hold on. And the majority, yeah, actually, oh my god, majority of my friend group has also lost interest and stopped playing. So there's no game is bad, but at least we're still having fun vibes. I saw this and I was actually kind of interested in what you guys have been thinking about this. Have you guys been feeling kind of the same thing? Because we kind of talked about WoW being more of a seasonal game last week. Do you think that this is just part of WoW being more of a seasonal game and less of a every week for the entirety of the patch kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I felt this a lot as well. I'm barely logging on, but I think it's also just how I typically like play games. I usually go pretty hard into games. And when I feel like my time to reward ratio has significantly dropped, I usually end up, finding something else to play or to dive into. I think a good example of this was like back when I played Diablo 3, I would play it, really, really strong at the start of the season, and then I get to a point where the drops that I would need are such a low chance that I'm farming all these, these mobs to try to get gear that is just not dropping, and at that point I'm just like, I'm done. And I think I'm kind of just there as well. There's not much that I want to do to, upgrade my characters. My character's almost max. I've cleared the raid. No interest in keys. Time to go play some other games.
What about delves?
See you in season 2.
Jeez.
My bread is maxed. I did my fair share of delves. My bread is
Squishy
maxed.
probably did the most delves out of any of us.
350 bountiful keys or some shit. Like, I've done a lot of delves. My time is done with those.
What I'll say is like people really need to think about what they want, because I remember in BFA there was a lot of complaint about RNG, about grinds, about acquisition, and those dramatically extend the lifespan of the game and keep you logging in every day, for better or for worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of accusations that, Blizzard is only doing this for metrics and subs and blah, 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 blah. And to some point, it did really feel like shit sometimes, right? If you couldn't get the corruption, or it was OP, or you couldn't get AP on your alts, there were a lot of, I'm not saying those systems were good, but, as someone who started in BFA and who has had the community complain more and more and more about variance and randomness and deterministic acquisition, now we're arriving at that point, but, we sort of knew that, okay, when this is the case, you kind of do have a gameplay loop that you do what you need to do or that you want to do in the first month or two, and then you quit. And, this isn't really an MMO where, you spend 4 months farming up gold and gearing up and preparing for the next raid. That's not what you do in this game anymore. Like, that's what you did in Wrath of the Lich King, right? But that's not what you do right now, right? Nobody logs into Herb to save up their gold for the next tier. I mean, okay, some people do, but a majority, like the main gameplay loop of WoW does not include that anymore. And so, people just have to realize that that's what you're not going to be super entertained without these sort of gimmicky systems. It's like people who play, I don't know, a game like poker, but they don't want any randomness. It's like, okay, well then play chess. That's like comparing poker to chess. It's like poker has a lot of fun, interesting dynamics to it, but then it also is like bullshit sometimes. Whereas chess, like if you're Magnus Carlsen, you're gonna beat the shit out of whoever's worse than you every single time, over and over and over again. Yep. And so every single game is somewhere on that spectrum, and I think that they've moved WoW a lot more towards the deterministic, consistent, get your item, get it quick, have your ults up and running. Yeah, do you need to grind a lot of crests? Yes, but, you have all your spells. It's not like before in Shadowlands, you would need to grind ults to get your conduits. You would have ability combos that wouldn't even work until you grind them out, or your corruption or whatever. Like, to complain about alt crests, while I agree alts aren't super friendly, like compared to every expansion in WoW's history, gearing alts is the easiest it's ever been. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's just something to consider. You know, I haven't been around in a while long enough to know what this lifespan is like. Like, is it gonna swing back towards, you know, corruption and crazy stuff again, or is it gonna stay deterministic? I don't know. Personally, I've enjoyed both. You know, I like weird, grindy, random, silly stuff, and I also like, you know, this. But I think, unfortunately, when you get this, what you get is you play the season for 2 or 3 months and then you move on.
Yeah.
And honestly, 3 months is a huge dub, bro. Having fun in World of Warcraft for 2 or 3 months, I'm like, I very fondly will remember this season. And which is surprising because I don't think the dungeons were that particularly fun. Like, I will absolutely fondly remember season 1 of The War Within.
I've enjoyed it as well. I feel like it's a situation where, how do I even describe this? Blizzard has made it, and you guys might feel similarly, but Blizzard's made it more difficult to be a content creator for World of Warcraft because exactly what you were describing about the lifespan of the patch and whatnot. But I don't really care because I'm having more fun as personally as a player with this more cyclical way of actually playing the game. I feel like it's been more enjoyable for me as like a player, even at the cost of necessarily having more consistent content as a content creator.
Yeah, as someone who makes healer videos, you know, there was a time in Shadowlands when I made a healer guide for every single freaking healer at the start of the patch. And now I'm like looking at it and it's like, every single healer is getting so many reworks and changes, and in the 0.5 patch, and like all, you know, they're really cooking. Like, and you know, to say, I totally sympathize. I understand that there's 30 whatever different specs, and some specs are going to be crap, and some specs are going to be not fun all the time. Specifically, you know, two very good Demon Hunter friends of mine, Psycho and Evade, incredibly intelligent, fun people that love WoW for a long time. Both have been enjoying WoW very little, or when Evade doesn't even log on as Demon Hunter anymore. And, you know, so I fully sympathize with Jedith here of feeling a little bit left out in the cold. But from a healer perspective, I mean, I think Disc Priest is some of the most fun it's ever been. The Mistweaver dev has been hard cooking ever since the start of Dragonflight. Resto Druid is kind of in a weird spot. You know, it's kind of come and gone. You know, usually towards the end of the expansion when you get a bunch of haste is when Resto starts feeling good. I mean, Shaman is little button bloated, but also like tons of people are playing it and enjoying it. Like, I don't know, like, you know, from my perspective, there's lots of cool classes to play. I think Prez is incredibly fun, incredibly interesting. Not a lot of people play that class. Holy could use some work. I think Holy's kind of a mess.
Holy Priest.
Yeah, I think Holy Paladin is a little bit undertuned because of how good it was in Raid, but I think Holy Paladin, I don't know. I think you know, it sort of depends on what you know, what classes you play and enjoy, but I think if you look for fun and WoW and you want to have fun, I think there are tons of really fun classes, and I think balance is, while it's not perfect and it took them a little while to nerf Enhancement Shaman for some reason, I think it's very, very good.
This is one of the better seasons tuning wise, I think. Definitely one of the better seasons we're gonna get. Obviously, there's always going to be a meta, but in terms of how good or bad stuff is actually one of the more okay seasons.
I empathize with the people that want to play WoW more, though. Like, you want to play your favorite game. Like, I understand that, but, you know, they're trying something different now. I mean, there's still some stuff going on, but it might not hit, you know, what you're looking for. Right now, there's that secret going on, which is still in progress. In 2 weeks, we're getting the new patch, which has the new ring, the new zone isle. So there's stuff, and then next year we're getting Plunderstorm back.
Yeah,
you know, in the new year before whatever inevitably 11.1 releases. So yeah, there's definitely a downswing right now for probably 2 weeks. Like, I think this would be a really good time. You know, I keep harping on the idea of like late tier dinars. Like, this would be a great time to put in a like late tier dinars. This is about the time when you know people. Yeah, people have been trying to farm that 1 or 2 items that have just been evading them the entire time. Give people like 1 dinar this late, and they can buy 1 item just to kind of like get that 1 item they've been missing. I think it would hit so hard.
Bro, I need a Spy Master's Web so bad. I still don't have it because I don't raid in a consistent guild, and I just log in and I have 20 new dumbasses from LFG in this heroic raid who all also need the Spy Master's Web on Silken Court, and then I offer them 200,000 gold and they go, "Will you pay $1 million?" And I go, "Absolutely not." And then I still don't have a Spy Master's Web. Please give me a dinar. I'm so over it. Yeah, I will say that Blizzard, I think they've made a stance where they want their content to kind of stand on its own, right? Be replayable enough on its own, you know, have Mythic Plus be replayable enough on its own, PvP kind of in a similar situation, Battleground Blitz, you know, BGs are kind of coming back a little bit because of that. And in some aspects, I think that they were successful, but I think that, like Raul was mentioning, the removal of systems like artifact power, like Titan forging, like corruption, that kind of stuff, does end up taking out that randomness a little bit that keeps you logging in for the entirety of a season. And Blizzard is really relying on their content and their in-game content being good enough. And I think that it largely is. I actually don't necessarily see there being an issue with the lifespan of a patch being when did the expansion launch? I can't remember. God, do you guys remember?
I don't even know what day it is.
The War Within launch. August 26th. Yeah, so I mean it's it's been about 4 months now, or I guess it's been 3 months now.
I mean, I think part of it as well as 1105 was the anniversary stuff, and like that was basically it. We had the Blackrock Depths raid, but the rewards were so not great there that people just kind of ignored it. We didn't really get like some 0.5s. We get a dungeon or other stuff. I think this 1105 obviously was celebrating a big big event, 20th anniversary of WoW. But in terms of the actual content, not too much in the end game, and I think that's kind of why people are burning out rather hard right now.
Yeah, I think they missed the mark a little bit with the anniversary stuff. I think the leveling and for fun stuff was cool. The collectible stuff was cool. I would have loved to see them push it back a little bit and then have it later on in the patch and then just like go ham with items. Like I think when we had that talk about Molten Core, what we really came to is like, bro, the rewards for that felt so bad. Like why wasn't it just tons of really cool, insane, open up
BRD?
BRD. Sorry. Yeah, whatever the classic raid was.
Yeah.
Like there should, they should have just been giving people dinars and myth track and tons of crests, and like it should have been like raining loot and having fun for the end of the season as the 20th anniversary, And I think that like to me that would have sealed it off. And then like now to have 11-1, to have Plunder Storm on the horizon, like all this other stuff, I think like the cadence would have felt a lot better. Like I think the anniversary patch maybe didn't accomplish exactly what they wanted it to be. I don't know. Maybe certain people enjoyed it, but I'm really starting to learn now, and I'm not trying to like say this isn't the case with me too. It very much is, that everyone is so rewards driven, and you really have to think hard about the rewards, where they fit in the patch, what each activities rewards you, and like, because that's all of what an RPG is like you log in, you have this plethora of different options to do, and then, what do I want to do and what do I get for it?
Yeah, how do I keep climbing that ladder?
Yep. HC hype. Have you guys been watching or following it? Dude, it is madness on Twitch.
I saw.
Honestly, if you're a retail Andy right now, that's all. I like. All right, I warned you guys that the classic stuff was coming. All right, if you're some retail Andy right now, that's like, I'm not watching any classic. Bro, WoW is popping off harder right now on Twitch than literally ever. Literally ever. It is crazy. Tyler 1 is getting 30,000 viewers every day. There's like multiple 5-figure viewer streamers on like almost at all times. Like there is Tyler 1 streaming. There's Pirate Software, Soda Poppin' and Vey have been streaming. P-Lov has been getting so many views. Whatever that graph is, that's not right. It's been popping off, and I know it.
Well, no. This is the last 365 days. When did HC come out?
Oh, that's a big graph then. Okay, yeah.
When did HC come out?
The
21st,
a week and a half ago, I think, or like a week and change.
Yeah, so the average viewers were about like 33,000, and since then the average viewership in the entire category, like the game World of Warcraft, the category had about 30,000 average viewers for a while, post like Race World First and stuff like that. It was like 40, then got down to 30. And now it's been averaging over like about at 120 since HC came out. One day it had like 180 average for the category. That's crazy.
This is how I feel at hardcore. I don't think many like people are interested in playing it.
Oh yeah, it's a great spectator event.
Absolutely a fantastic thing to watch as entertainment.
Yeah.
One, because there's a lot more personalities that came from outside the WoW sphere. So maybe your favorite other game creator is now playing WoW, which is awesome to see. And two, watching people die and lose everything in their body but he
Yep.
just trades from them due to insert reason here. I saw somebody like DC'd and lost like a level 40 character or something like that. Like just seeing the clips has been pretty entertaining from my point of view.
Dude, the
That's
fun.
fine. I'm glad you're at least dabbling in it and just seeing because it
Just a
really
little.
it really is a spectacle. Like it's just an absolute spectacle that like I hope people don't get too tribal about retail and not enjoy what's going on right now because it really is like a cool thing that's happening in WoW. Like I think if you're somebody if you're somebody who like only does retail Mythic Plus and you don't enjoy anything else about WoW, it can feel like a lull in the action. But like this stuff that's been going on with Fresh has been absolutely insane.
I saw a clip of Tyler One having a meeting with the Torrens in Thunder Bluff, and he's just yelling like max volume, and they're mooing back.
Yeah, so a thing about the Torrens is, so you have War Stomp, right? So all the Torrens, I'm told, have a macro where it's a moo and a War Stomp, and so that's how like they cheer or agree, is you like press your War Stomp and you like slam the ground and moo in the air and shit. Like that's probably what it was, right? Yeah, it's so good.
It's giving me sort of like GTA RP vibes.
Yes, it's very much RP. Like it's very much old school MMO, like drama, like none of it's very much that. It's not retail for sure.
Yeah. I love watching the like death thing of like what they died to, final words or something like that. The final
Oh
words
yeah, the
always
last
get me.
words. It's glorious because you have this log on the side of your screen running, and every time someone dies, you see what they died to, where they died, and like the last thing they said. And like every single death has a story, man. Like you see some, poor little mage popping off in his chat. Hey guys, look what I just got. And he links this crazy staff, and then he dies to the last boss of that dungeon. And him and that staff are just buried in that dungeon for the rest of time.
Can you explain to me the stat page that we've been seeing with HC? What exactly is that?
The stat page. So are you talking about the points for the
Yes.
races?
What are the points for? I don't get it.
Okay, so this is a little bit of RP, but basically Soda Poppin' made a guild. It's got hundreds of people in it from all over. Like you have to be invited or vetted. It's streamers and content creators and like basically community members from everywhere. And when you join the guild, you don't get to pick what your role. You have to take a quiz. And the quiz is this like ridiculous, like, if you had a pet, what would
It's
it
a
be? And it would
quiz.
Yes, and it would be like, a ferocious bird, like a tiny raptor, like a leaping frog, and it's a bunch of these questions, and then at the end of the quiz, it gives you your race. It tells you you are an orc, you are a tauren, and you're drafted to this team. And so now, while you're leveling in hardcore, as you level up your professions and your character, you earn points for your race or your tribe or
Are they
whatever.
only Horde?
Yes, everybody is Horde, basically. If you don't want to interact with the streamers at all, if you just want to play fresh hardcore, then you roll Alliance and you don't deal with any of these people. And then everybody, the streamers and the Twitch people, are basically rolling Horde. And so there's a big leaderboard of basically like, all the professions everybody does and all the levels they get. And if you die in stupid ways, you're punished. You're punishing your tribe heavier. So if you die to some random mob in a dungeon, that's one thing. If you fall off of an elevator 10,000 feet in 1,000 needles and you die, that's double points. Muchaz, not to be a rat, but he was auto running out of a dungeon and he auto ran into lava and just died. And he lost double points for his race because he burned to death in lava.
Wait,
he didn't even die to a mob.
How is Muchas in that guild?
He was. I guess he's friends with. He got in there somewhere. Yeah. You just basically have to know people. Yeah, you basically just have to know people.
That's fair.
Yeah, and then the TLDR is at the end of the week, there is a sort of like a tribute chest that all the viewers, the people that are watching, can submit gold or rare items that they found. And then Soda basically creates an event over all of the tribute chest and rewards the winning team. So for example, the first week, they had a tribute. They basically had a bank alt with like, let's say 20 or 30 different items, and then each race had to draft a person, but that person had to be completely brand new to WoW, know absolutely nothing about WoW. And then they had a round robin draft of the items, but you couldn't look at the items. all you could do was see the little icon of the item. And so if you were like a big classic nerd, you kind of know what the icons are and what's good or what's not. But the people who are new have no fucking idea. So they're just picking like, you know, random level 1 greens and like fish. And then like sometimes there'll be like a random, and it's just like just absolute tomfoolery and content 24/7. And
Honestly, I was gonna say, like, all of this just sounds like it'd be really good if somebody edited all of this down into like a YouTube series.
yes, I
Like,
hope there is.
like,
I mean, the thing is, there's tons of content creators, so there definitely will be.
like it reminds me of like the Survivor. Like, oh, we're gonna have this week's challenge, and it's just that challenge, and then week 2 we have this challenge. It's like it feels like if somebody could get it down to a 20 to 30 minute thing, or like even a 40-minute thing, I feel like it'd go so hard.
Dude, after Tyler 1 got banned from League of Legends, he played a lot of variety games. And I remember one of the games that he played a lot of was DayZ. I don't know if you guys remember DayZ at all.
Oh, God.
Daisy goes hard. Oh,
He
yeah.
played so much DayZ. It would RP in that game like every day. And this just, I see some of the clips from him, and it just gives me insane vibes. Like I'm watching him
Okay.
6 years ago playing DayZ.
I have to say something though. DayZ reminded me of something that Hardcore has: proximity chat.
Yep, so that's
Proximity
one of the
chat?
Proc's voice.
Okay, so this one of the big add-on devs cooked this crazy add-on up where basically there's a guild voice call, like, you know, the in-game voice chat. I
Yeah.
think this is the way it works. There's a guild voice call running 24/7, and what it does is it automatically mutes and unmutes and changes volume of everybody in the call based off of where they are. So as you walk by people in town, it says, "Hey, here's the people. Here's who's in this town," and like you can, and like there's like distance, so you hear them, and then they talk like this, and then there's
It's like VR chat.
Yes, it's just like VR chat, and there's also been some very, very ridiculous moments in there.
That's cool.
Notably, you know, I'm gonna have to throw a little bit of shade here. I ran into Pirate Software, and I was kind of, you know, I'm a Pirate Software fan. I like that guy. He completely fucking ignored me. He was just too busy talking to his chat. I'm like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" No response. I'm like, "Yeah, maybe he's, you know, busy." I sent him an emote. No response. I see he's almost level 40. I sent him a DM. "Hey man, almost level 40. You got how's your mount fund looking?" No response. So I just got turbo dono walled by Pirate Software. So just you know, if he happens to die in the dungeon that I'm healing, you know, hey, you should have said hi.
That's
I
messed
actually
up.
think proximity chat is one of the best things to get added to multiple games this time, like as of recently. Do you think retail WoW could use proximity chat?
I
Would
think
you
that-
like it?
Dude, I wish that whenever I started in like WoD, I wished that retail WoW had like proximity voice. I thought that was sick. I thought it was a mistake that Blizzard didn't have it 10 years ago.
I think it'd be really great. Not only like in towns, I think it could be just hilarious just to hear people like. I think that's kind of how you foster a little bit of community building as well, because it's just really hard to talk with people when it's only through chat and you have to like opt in to people. But if you hear a conversation going on, it might be funny. Like, I don't know.
I'm looking for a jewel crafter to craft me a ring. I need the binding of binding. Any jewel crafters here?
You know,
you
do
can
you have the ability to play Eclipse audio or no?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, this is the clip. You might skip ahead like 20 seconds. You should play this since we're talking about proxy voice chat, unless you're trying to wrap it up. But this is POV of Ampi. Ampi is like the #1 speedrunner, like hardcore Giga Chad tryhard guy. And then the other guy in the clip is Dendi, who is like a very funny, ridiculous, like Dota pro.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
the Dota
Dendi
pro.
from Dota. Yeah. This is just like the random stuff that happens when you're in town.
Sarth here. Sarth and Sardonko and Dendi.
Sarth, the classic guy, I guess.
Yep.
Sardonko! Sardelka! I'm on the boat! On the boat! I'm coming, wait for me! Don't swim away from me! Hello! On what boat you are? Hello, Sardelka! On the boat Oh, wait! Come on!
So good. You're just like running
is
through
good.
town and you just hear people like yelling and just like, Yeah, it's great fun. And I mean, does this have anything to do with retail WoW? No, but
No.
it's just amazing. Like it just you don't get to experience stuff like this in WoW very often, even if it is only
No.
classic.
I love the return to form though, like especially it very much GTA RP vibes, and that's always fun. So I'm glad you and a bunch of other people are enjoying it. I've been enjoying the clips that I've seen. It's good entertainment.
Community is one of the most important things for me in World of Warcraft, honestly, and it's one of the reasons that I find WoW the most fun. Is like just a sense of friendship and camaraderie that I've built over time with just the people that I know that play WoW. And this seems like that kind of gets back to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. That goes back with our find buds to play M+ with or whatever, because at
Yeah.
least you get stuff like this. I mean, granted, you get stuff like this in Pugs too if you really try, but most people are, too quiet or not fun or whatever.
Yeah. I saw this tweet. If you took the top 500 keys from each season that Aug Evoker has been playable, you'd be looking at 2,000 keys total. Of those 2,000 keys, Aug Evoker has been in 1,831 of them, 91.6%. That is more than 22 of the remaining 25 DPS specs combined, and this season is no exception. If you guys are looking at the meta, Aug Evoker is dominant again. It is somewhere in the order of, I think I saw a tweet, and I want to say it was like, yeah, look at this. Current top 1% title representation for Mythic Plus, Aug Evoker is the most, or actually the second most represented. The only other thing that has more representation right now is Enhancement Shaman.
Which is kind of no surprise, I think.
I don't know, man. I feel like we got to do something about Aug. This is like the one to tier Aug conversation again. This spec just continues to be problematic. I don't know what to do about it. I don't even think it's like, I'm not even like mad. Some people got really upset about it. In general, I'm not even like that upset. But I do think it's a situation where it's just, it sucks whenever it's the same spec every single season. And for the exact same reasons that it's the same spec every single season, right?
This is a hard
Yeah.
one because essentially with the way that WoW has streamlined dungeons now, it's not so much limited on the dungeon based off of how big you pull or your crazy routes. For the most part, if you just do good damage and go through the dungeon in a straight line and survive, you win the key. And unfortunately, at a high level, what that turns into is you just need to survive. Like, obviously, you can't just bring classes that deal 0 damage, but Aug, the trade-off of its damage versus survival is so good for high keys that it's like, why wouldn't you bring it? And I actually feel this is, I could be wrong here, but I feel like this is very much a high key only problem.
It is.
I think that if you were to look at
It is.
Pug keys like 13 and below, which I mean 13 is pretty dang high. I doubt you even see that many Augs. And I'm not really sure what to make of this. To have a problem that only exists in high keys, I don't know if that's really that much of a problem.
We can check 10 and up, and it's, I mean, Aug is not even that popular in DPS.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where like, let's say every single team in TGP or MDI ran the same comp. Like, we don't really see that as a problem, right? That's sort of how it works. Well, isn't that kind of the same as this? Like everybody who's trying to do title range keys or like world first stuff is running this. I bet Enhancement Shaman is probably pretty close up there too. I don't know. I think it's annoying, but I think that they really need to make sure the balance is good for the average players, and I think that for the most part it is, and I think that this is a high key outlier, and this is a secondary problem for them.
I
think,
agree.
I agree that's a secondary problem. I do think it's an issue though whenever you, how do I even describe this? It's like you're bringing a second copy of the Enhancement Shaman, except you're not bringing the downsides of bringing a second copy of the Enhancement Shaman.
Yeah. I mean,
I literally think I mean Aug is the lowest damage, right? Like
I have DPS DK sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe. I don't consider. I mean, DK isn't really that good of damage either. Like in my opinion, you do way more damage with other classes.
Oh, DK is not.
DK just survives.
DK is not insane or anything.
Yeah, I'm not saying Aug is bad damage. Like I might agree that the trade-off between healing and damage isn't quite there, where Aug is still OP. But yeah, I don't know. I think to me, this is a very complicated problem that they're not going to be able to fix. One big thing is that there aren't really those other support specs that exist. Like Aug, for all intents and purposes, should in lower level groups be a low DPS spec that helps with your survivability. Like that's a good trade-off and option that people can have, I think. Also, I think that like the part of the reason that Aug is so good in high keys is because of this whole timer situation and the whole balance of your HP and the way that the dungeons are
That's
designed.
where I was
And
going to
it's
go.
just like a very systemic, difficult to address problem that
Yeah.
like the only like when we are looking at these pie charts or these statistics about Aug, the only solution that exists anywhere in the next year is just throw Aug into the dumpster and have it never exist again. Like just nerf every single ability so it sucks and then just leave it, or just like, you know, make it a DPS and not, you know, remove its entire identity. And maybe that's the right solution, I don't know, but unfortunately, like it's a very complicated systemic problem with the reason and it shows because it only exists in high keys, you know. It's not like it's completely dominating the pug scene. And so unfortunately, I think this needs to get thrown on the back burner for now, and there's not really much they can do.
The interesting thing about AUG specifically is you look at, you know, top Race to World First comps, meta groups before AUG, the pug scene usually copies the top groups in terms of class and comp. AUG is the exception to that. People have learned that AUG does not help them complete the key faster. AUG is, they know it's purely a survivability thing.
Ooh.
And so you have a meta from Dragonflight Season 3, Dragonflight Season 4, and then War Within Season 1, where the limiting factor is not damage, but survivability. And who is the king of survivability? AUG. The meta has not changed, therefore, AUG is still part of the comp. Like, if Blizzard wants to change this, they need to... If they don't plan on changing AUG, which I don't think they should, because, as Graal said, in lower keys, it has a niche. You know, it's just a fun buff your friends playstyle, and that is a very unique playstyle that some people enjoy. But if they don't want to fix that, and they do want to fix this issue, which maybe they see it as fine, if they do want to fix it, then they need to come back and push people into moving away from survivability and more into damage checks. You know, instead, Guile could give 30% health and provide no additional damage.
Ooh, I'm down.
Guile could reduce the timer.
I'm less down. I'm less down.
I'm just just tossing out like various things there. Like AUG, as you said, definitely does, you know, usually does less damage than the others, and I think that's been a fair trade-off. But the issue for specifically high keys is you're going to time the key as long as you don't die. The punishment for dying is way worse than the punishment for bringing in AUG.
You do about the same. You do about the same damage as like your other DPS. It's all contingent on how much damage your other DPS are doing too. Is part of it.
Exactly.
Well, I also think that part of what makes AUG good is your other DPS playing good and playing.
Oh yeah.
You can anticipate how they're gonna play, right? And you're working together. And I think that having all the pugs not play AUG actually gives me a little bit of justification and like faith in the system. Because we do hear this very often, right? Oh, pugs are meta slaves. All they do is copy the high keys, right? They really don't with AUG, right? Because I really think that deep down somewhere, a lot of pugs genuinely do runs. They feel, you know, they see how things are. They get a feel for what classes they win with and what classes they don't, and they make their own decisions. You know, like I would imagine that I would say most pugs are still probably playing with Resto Shaman right now, even though are they more accepting of Disc Priest because they're dominating the top of the leaderboard? Yeah. But I would say that Resto Shaman is also probably more common in lower keys for the similar reasons, right? Because they look at Resto Shamans and they're like, okay, well, they do things sometimes. Disc Priest literally never does anything, and half the people I get don't even know how to play Disc Priest at this level. So, like, yeah, I think pugs do make decisions for themselves. I don't think that... I like the AUG statistics because I think it's proof of what I think that pugs do actually think about things and don't just blind meta slave like whatever the highest groups do.
Here's the thing with pugging as an AUG as well is like AUG is only as good as your worst DPS is bad, right? And AUG is a specialization that it's impossible to carry a pug on an Aug Evoker because you are there and you're tied to the other two DPS.
Yeah,
And
how do you
so-
feel when one of your pug DPS dies, Tuttles?
Well, it's not even about Tug DPS dying. It's more just like the fact that they're just bad and they don't do damage. So you're buffing somebody who's bad and doesn't do damage. Meanwhile, you could actually be playing a specialization that, like, if you were a good player, you'd have more relative impact on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they see it as an issue because, like Grouse said, it's only the top keys.
I mean, it's the fourth season in a row that's been heavily dominated by Aug. I don't know. I feel like at some point you have to kind of.
I think people are happy with the state of it because it didn't show up in raid. I honestly think people are okay with that. And I think as long as it doesn't happen in raid, I don't think people care.
Listen, I'm gonna log on to it and play it every single season because there's not that many people who play
That's
it.
fine.
But like at the same point, I feel like it. I don't like the fact that one of your DPS slots is locked and it's the same specialization every single week.
People are always going to roll at the top end keys to whatever is the best at the time.
Aug.
Why does it matter what class it is?
Aug.
But like
Aug.
You know, if the comp in one season is, you know, let's say God comp season 2, Aug, Fire Mage, Shadow Priest. Why does it how much does it matter that the best comp for the next season is Warrior, Ret, Shadow, not Shadow.
It feels
Hunter.
it feels bad if it's 4 seasons in a row. It's kind of like if it was Fire Mage 4 seasons in a row, it'd be really annoying.
Yeah, the problem is just they can't fix it without gutting into the ground, right?
I mean, it's tough to solve, and it's actually pretty fun to play. I'm actually been enjoying playing it.
It's hella fun to play. Yeah, from a game dev standpoint, the what I think Blizzard is thinking is it's fine for everything except high keys. High keys are gonna re-roll to whatever's gonna be best anyways. Therefore, it's not worth our time.
I would say it looks bad too, though. Just on them. Whenever every single season, it's like, dude, Aug is back again. Like, why? Why do we have to play with this shit again?
Is it different than raid, like a Demon Hunter always being in a raid, a world first raid?
Well, yeah, because it's a 5-man comp versus a 20.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the argument here is obviously it's a 5-man group versus a 20-man group.
I mean, you could argue with all the raid buffs now, it's also a 5-man group of remaining slots in raid versus.
All right.
You gotta have your raid buff for Mythic Plus. It's just a required raid buff for Mythic Plus now.
Whenever you start talking about compositions for Mythic Plus, you only list 2 DPS.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're only listing like 4 for raid now.
I guess that's fair. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing that I saw some stats on it. I was like, wow, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, no, I feel it. I definitely sympathize. Like, I agree with 100% what you're saying. Like, it doesn't feel great, and it's something they need to look at. But it's hard because there's a trade.
I don't think it needs to be gutted, but I don't like the fact that
the problem is just they really can't, though, right? Like with how high keys are nowadays, and with what Aug is supposed to bring. I think that they can't without gutting it is the problem.
I agree with what you're saying.
You have to think about how it feels for the mid-level keys, right? Like I understand what you're saying.
It's bad. It's bad at mid-level keys.
Exactly, right? Like they could tune it down for high-level keys so that it's, decent but not meta. But then for the average player, it would be so bad, right? Like it would be so bad in like Pug 10s or whatever.
It's so polarizing too, because I think in like a weekly 10 or something like that, I bet your average Aug is replacement level with a tank in terms of damage that they're helping you with. Yeah. Like it is not that good, because it's I would say 70% or maybe even 80% of the contribution on like their damage is on the Aug itself, but 20% of it's on your DPS also not being idiots, or like 30% of it's on your DPS not being idiots, and like that is, you never know what you're gonna get, and you need both of your other DPS to not be idiots.
Yeah. It's tough.
You got anything for this week, Squishy?
No, not really.
Okay. We can cut to Q&A then. Okay. First question we have.
This was a good one. I saw this one.
Daniel asks, or he states first off, but he asks, me and my officer team are currently having a discussion about whether it's a good idea to bench a raider for a recruit for a final boss. For reference, the player that would be benched is one of the lower performing players, parsing wise and mechanically. They also have had attitude issues during the tier, and while the recruit is near 100% parsing on Mythic, their argument is that we shouldn't screw someone out of a spot on the final boss when they've been with us all tier. However, in our raid expectations, we spell out that a raid spot actually isn't guaranteed, and there are certain metrics that we use to determine the roster. Should we just ignore these raid expectations so we don't hurt this player's feelings? Squishy, I think that as a raid leader and an officer, you are probably the most apt to tackle this.
I mean, the short answer is the hard truth. It sounds like you've already made your decision.
Yes.
I think you've laid out all the points that and all the reasons that you should go one way and just probably don't want to do it because it sucks to hurt someone's feelings. And that's totally valid. But you set up these expectations and it sounds like you want to make the decision where you put in the recruit. And I think that's totally fair given the expectations of the raid. Because if you don't, then the raid expectations mean nothing. If he gets a pass, other people are going to be angry, and then you're hurting other players' feelings. Yeah, the way that I personally treat recruits in Might is they're no different than raiders. They're there on the same raid days, during the same times, they're putting the same work, usually, outside of raid hours, doing Mythic Plus, and in raid, doing research. They get, they should have access to relatively the same loot, the same playtime, and everything, Now, obviously, I don't know how your guild runs things. Is a recruit on the bench? Are they kind of like a second fiddle to the main roster? That's kind of something that you'll have to figure out for yourself. But it sounds like you have one player that is a lot better than the other. And if that's the way that your guild wants to go and the other one is struggling and having attitude issues, then it sounds like you want to replace them.
I think that whenever I first started the game, there was a difference between raiders in a guild and recruits. And as time has gone on, and I would say about BFA, this really started to change. And as time has gone on, raiders and recruits mean mostly the same thing. Where, if you're a recruit, the only difference is you might have somebody looking over your shoulder a little bit more to make sure that you are continuing to perform and meet expectations in that way. But I think I view a recruit as just a valuable member of a team. It's like being a rookie in the NFL. If the rookie is the best player at a specific position, say they're the best wide receiver on your team, they're going to be the starting wide receiver, even though they're a rookie. And sure, they might not get paid like a vet, but it is still somebody who is a valuable member of the team, and they're not treated any differently than the rest.
I'm going to assume everything you said was correct there, because that was a hockey reference that I don't get.
That was a football. Anyway.
Football? Oh, shit.
Yeah, there are no wide receivers in hockey, Switchy. All right, I'll save you here. I think what you want to be thinking about right here is what do you feel that you owe this player, the guy who is rostered to you. And personally, I believe that if he's in your guild, if he's showing up all the time and being at least reasonable, I think you do owe him something, right? I think, in my opinion, if you're a cutting edge guild, you owe him a kill on the last boss. And if that includes, a shot at the mount, also, that may include some boxes or whatever, like if he wants 4 bosses a week or whatever. I don't necessarily think that you owe this person that he needs to be in. Just because someone is signed up to your raid roster doesn't mean they're owed to be in on every single boss at all times. But, I do think you should, if he wants a kill of the boss after, if he wants, whatever, if he wants to be in, hey, I'm trying to farm this item or that or whatever. I think you shouldn't be kicking this person to the curb. I think that, you should be considerate over what you owe them. And I think that getting them their Hall of Fame or cutting edge achievement, whatever level of guild you are, or AOTC or wherever this extends to, at some point in the season, I think is fair unless they're being outrageous. And I think that, if they're trying to get some items from the raid, I think that's also, reasonably fair within reason, right? Because you have more than 20 raiders that you have to deal with. However, I don't think that you owe this person a slot in every single boss for Prog forever, unless that's something you talked about, right? For example, that's
promised them,
right? If there's some sort of arrangement where this guy's like, hey, I'll raid with you, but I want to be in on every boss. I'm not sitting on the bench, or I'd rather find another guild. Which I've had that conversation with raid leaders before, or in situations, and I've heard of that before, right? But unless you've had that conversation, I don't think this person, just because one is a recruit and one is whatever, just like you said, I don't think you owe them any more or less just because they were in your guild before.
What I'm going to also say is a point that you were kind of tiptoeing around. I think that part of being like a good teammate and like a raid team is actually being willing to like sit whenever there is a player who is either playing a better specialization than you or is just like playing better than you, and being willing to sit. I think just makes you a better teammate for those situations and for those raid tiers where you are the better fit player and you will be in over them or in replacement of somebody else. And I think it's just one of those, it's just part of being a team. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not like this person's never going to kill the boss. They're going to come in on farm. They're going to kill the boss eventually. They might not kill it during prog, but I mean, it's not like you're holding out on a kill for them and they're never going to get it or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I never want to deal with attitude issues. That is the least fun thing as an officer to deal
Attitude
with.
issues is so annoying to me.
It is the worst. So that alone is just like, okay, I don't want to deal with it, especially on Queen. Queen is one of the like most solo like personal responsibility bosses in a very long time, where if you just trip on a web blade and die, everybody's gonna kind of glare at you for wasting the res. So like it's already going to be really tough on the raid as a whole to keep it together. Having more attitudes of people blaming other people for mistakes or whatever these attitude issues are, it's just probably not something you want to deal with on this fight.
Yeah, I think what it keeps coming back to is attitude, and this is one where it exists on a huge spectrum. And I think that, like, if he doesn't, if he doesn't get along with some people or there are some disagreements, then it's one thing. But like, if this person is very negatively impacting the raid, then that's something that you want to try and get them out or whatever. And I think that unfortunately, you have to make this call. But I think the fact that you say that you want to get him out, basically, and then other people in your guild are saying, "Hey, maybe we should keep him," maybe makes me think that maybe the attitude problem isn't so severe, right? Because usually these people are, everyone is in agreement wanting to kick them out.
And realistically as well, if you talk with them and say you're not going to be in and it goes poorly, maybe it's not something you want. Like maybe you just saved yourself a lot of grief. But that is something that you have to decide given more details in the circumstance. But the whole recruit discussion, I think Tettles and I both agree, a recruit is basically equivalent to a raider at this point.
Yeah. Next question. LLL ick. What do you think of an all random, no utility mode for dungeon running in WoW? The idea would be that you queue up and you cannot actually pick a class or specialization at random, all random, and then the timers in the dungeon would be reduced and all kicks and stops will be removed. Your team would get 3 lusts for dungeon that anyone in the team could activate, and there would be no penalty for deaths. Ideally, this mode would be a way to bring an MDI format into Mythic Plus without having the solo queue issues, as it would just be a for fun limited time event. Ooh, interesting. Kind of like a specless.
I think this is a little bit overcooked. I think the idea of doing like sort like a simplistic for fun big pull mode could be cool, but I think that like this has too much stuff in there, like removing utility or anything like that's. I think basically Blizzard would never do this, right? So I think that I like the idea of including some sort of like MDI mode or challenge mode or like pull big go fast mode, but I think this might be a little bit too much.
I think they could just bring back challenge mode, like straight up.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I think what he's trying to solve here is just like the getting into groups difficulty, right? Like meta classes, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I think this is just a little like I think there's something that's fun there. I don't know that this is specifically it, but all right, Growl. Let me just pitch something to you, all right? You played a lot of Plunderstorm. What if we had a dungeon with Plunderstorm style abilities?
Oh my god.
That'd be cool.
Like, you could even make it like you start off with like one ability. You kill some trash, you get a second ability, then you kill a boss, like it's a boss with those, and then you just keep it really simple.
Yeah,
and then you kill the boss, you get to choose. Yeah, except not crap.
I mean, it would just be like a very mini, like for fun event sort of thing, like a 1 week thing. It wouldn't be like a mainstay, I guess. Whereas when I think of like the MDI equivalent or whatever, like I'm thinking more of like a mainstay or like a challenge mode type thing,
What I will say is also, I love utility in World of Warcraft. I feel like my utility buttons are some of the buttons that I find the most precious in terms of like how I feel about playing a specialization. Very rarely does it come down to how I feel about my actual like damage rotation. Very, very frequently does it come down to how I feel about pressing my utility at any given moment, and like the satisfaction I get from helping with stops and stuff like that. And so I don't love the idea of like no utility. I like utility in WoW.
How would you feel if an affix gave you a benefit of like 50% reduced cooldown utility abilities, kicks, stops?
I could be down for an affix to give me Cepha's secret back. You know, where you apply loss of control effect, or you land an interrupt and then you gain haste.
That's just the worst version of the orb affix.
Huh? Well, I don't know. It felt
that's exactly the orb affix. You're using a stop on the orbs and getting a haste buff.
But it was on the mobs. It was on the mobs. It was different.
Oh, you're talking. Okay, well, it's a similar thing, but yeah, I think there's a world where just going in and AoEing a bunch of stuff is just fun.
Yeah,
I think that'd get old relatively quickly.
I think there's something here. I think that you could bring back. I think that challenge modes could actually be brought back and actually be interesting. I don't think they need to be like incentivized in the way that like you get gear out of them or anything like that. But I think they could be for fun, like an interesting for fun mode, especially if they brought back like the WAD and MOP style leaderboards where you had for the CMs, especially if you, because I think that one of the cool things about CMs was the fact that you would make a set that worked really, really well, and it included really gimmicky shit sometimes that didn't scale properly, and that was kind of the fun part of CMs, is making a CM set.
For context, challenge modes were item level capped, so
yeah,
you could never outgear them. Everybody was at the same item level. The only thing you could do is change stats, have gear with sockets, change your trinkets, stuff like that.
And to get gold, which is the highest level reward, which awarded like a Mog set, it awarded a mount. It wasn't like that hard to get all golds. But it was really hard if you wanted to like push past that timer, and some people really optimize some of these timers. All right. Okay, last question. Arhoon asks, solo queue is the worst part of every single game. It's part of League, Counter-Strike, Overwatch, and Dota with 4 friends versus solo queue is worlds apart. WoW is no different. But in my opinion, Blizzard needs to put effort into the pre-made scene instead of spending time in the pug scene. It's embarrassing in-game tools. It's embarrassing in-game tools to actually find a group of people to play with doesn't exist. Yeah, I agree with that. Expecting people to do 50 keys to find a similar-minded people who are able to play at the same time with you is a ridiculous bar outside of maybe the top 1%. It's just a ridiculous bar. The same goes for raiding. With the immense amount of work officers spend recruiting in the world, 200 to 4,000, especially when you're limited by language or strange raid hours. Question: what would a proper in-game system look like for creating Mythic Plus groups for both fun gear pushing and raid recruitment? Am I coping and believing that it would make a better Mythic Plus ecosystem and help it a lot? I think the WoW in-game,
because I think I'm gonna gun this guy down.
I think the WoW in-game guild finder is absolutely atrocious. I think that this shit is just, it's always been bad. Like, as long as I played the game, it is a complete joke. The only thing that you've ever actually used is third-party sites to actually be able to find guilds, raid recruitment, groups, Discord, utilizing Discord to find people to help you do Mythic Plus. Sometimes I'll search Raider.io to actually find people to help. I think that I actually agree that I don't think that there is enough applied for the player who is trying to find just groups in general. As for solo queue, I actually think that World of Warcraft and Mythic Plus just in general doesn't really have a good foundation to add solo queue into, and I feel like adding solo queue into a system that was not created for it would be more harmful than good, realistically. And I do think that there's a subset of players that it would be helpful for just in general, but I don't think it's like for the broader player base. I think it's more harmful than it is good, especially if you end up like separating out the player base. I mean, we talked about it in the past in a couple of episodes. But yeah, I think that a proper in-game system would be nice. I do think it should have came 10 years ago. Not that you can't add something in now that would help, but I think it's difficult whenever there are already third-party pre-existing systems that people now use.
Okay. For me, I mean, I think the pre-existing systems works very much for raid. I mean, let's be honest here, Mythic raid. This isn't like a you're joining kind of a community or anything like that. You're applying for a job. When you are joining a Mythic Raid guild, you're applying for a job essentially. That's just the way the Mythic Raid community kind of has developed in WoW. Set hours, set times, set rules and expectations, and an application that you have to submit. Like that, I don't think is ever going to change, and I don't think Blizzard should or will touch that because it's just out of their hands. Just even if they put up a leaderboard or a bulletin board for posting for Mythic Raiding guilds, that's not going to do much. The system already exists. People are still going to go to WoW Progress, on that note, WoW Progress still exists. People still go to WoW Progress for guild recruitment, despite Raider.io existing, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, the pug scene. I think one of the things that Blizzard needs to do the most is every single group needs to have labeled. I think like when you apply for a custom group fighter, you can set it as completion or timing or something. What are the three I know there's a drop down menu for it. Do you either of you know it?
There's a drop down menu for dungeons.
I know
I thought there
completion
was.
and time are the only two that I remember.
I will need to double check that. But I think the biggest thing that of why there is frustration in general is when players' expectations are mixed, and not having that known to players clearly is why I think you see a lot of leavers. You have half the group that wants to go in and complete the key altogether for their weekly, and half the people that want it for score. And so having a very clear, even separating the dungeons into dungeons complete and dungeons time, I think would go a very long way in cutting the amount of levers and improving the Mythic Plus pug community by a decent amount, because you're grouping the players who want to complete and the players who want to time into two separate categories. Any more than that, though, I don't know how much they should do, because ultimately this comes down to a social issue, and as we talked about earlier, people are very much unaware of how, or maybe not unaware. There are many trolls out there who are toxic and are going to grief other people.
The only thing I'm going to say is you talked about you joining a raiding guild being like applying for a job. The only thing I'm going to say is I think that they were talking about it from the opposite angle, being a guild that's actually struggling to get people to apply and struggling to get new recruits in there.
I still think that it's not going to change. Maybe Growl can have some do you think your guild Mythic Raid guild issues would have been improved if Blizzard had an in-game system? What would that system be for helping your guild recruit?
So when it comes to raiding, I think while I agree the systems aren't great, I think that there are third-party systems that are great, and I think that when it comes to a big commitment like finding a raiding guild, also considering that there's so many different raiding guilds of different flavors, unfortunately it's going to be really hard to make a good in-game system, right? When you want to post your schedule and the days that you raid and ask people questions and see their logs and to have some sort of in-game system that would allow that, I think would be asking a bit too much. So I think it's maybe they can improve the guild finder a little bit, but for the most part I think the current system works fine. I think the biggest problem is just that everybody is a lot more picky in general. I mean, maybe for right reason. For example, right now, why would somebody want to join our guild when we're stuck on the last boss, right? So many people have voiced that they will join our guild after farm, right? Once you guys are done, you completed the tier, okay, then we'll join, whereas the people that would join our guild are people that probably have never gotten cutting edge before, right? They would join our guild because that's their shot at getting cutting edge, but our guild doesn't want those people, right? We want better people than that. We want people that have mythic last boss logs, and so therein lies the problem, is that the subsection of people that our guild wants and people that want to join our guild right now to progress on Queen Ansarek is very small. And no in-game system is going to make that better. And I think that, somewhere, some way, you just have to give a little in there, at least, when it comes to rating. I think that also the third-party systems gives a little bit more of a human feel to the applications, and it sort of lets you communicate, and see like, maybe this guy doesn't quite, he hasn't gotten cutting edge, but he seems very reasonable and he plays other games and blah, blah, blah. And he used to play this other game that I played and I knew that game was cool. Like this, in general, I think there's not really a problem with the guild situation.
I think the problem to me is that it just doesn't. It's so hard to fix this. It's not that it's not a problem. I actually tend to agree that I think it actually is a problem. I think that it's just ever since Discord came out too, I feel like a lot of the need for something like this has also been mitigated a substantial amount.
Sure, I mean it's a problem, but I think it's like a reasonable problem. Like, for example, one thing that when I first started, I was very frustrated by the gatekeeping and how difficult it was to get into guilds, because I knew that I was going to be good at this game because I just play games a lot. I'm a fucking nerd. And I knew also I know how to talk to people, right? I can communicate these things. Like, I didn't sound like a dumbass when I first started. I was a beginner, but I didn't sound like a dumbass. And I was frustrated by the gatekeeping, right? As I've played WoW and stuck around more people like Squishy or like Soj, my old guild leader, I've grown a lot more respect for what they've built over the time period and then understanding why they're so picky. Because actually running a guild and having things go smooth and completing the raid and doing all this shit is a ton of work, and it's something that's not easy. Like, it's something that you put so much effort into getting and you need to protect it. And so, like, it's, a weird situation where, I want to be in a better guild than I currently am, and the raid leader wants better players than they currently have, and that doesn't quite work, but that's just how it's going to be, and you just have to put in the work and get in there somewhere. It's sort of like finding a job, right? Like, finding a job fucking sucks, but eventually when you do, once you find your one job that you love, okay, bam, it's over. It's one of those things where, like, if it was really that smooth and painless and easy, it's like, if you could just press a button and find a guild instantly, it just wouldn't work, right? Like, how would that even work? But one thing, what I wanted to say and comment on is this guy also addresses Mythic Plus, and he specifically says Blizzard needs to put effort into the pre-made scene instead of spending time on the pug scene. And I think this is a little bit of an outrageous take here. And the idea that the in-game system for pug, like, somehow that they're not, like, you're not able to network with people in game, I think is just like, it's super cope. I think in general this problem exists. Like, it doesn't need to exist in Mythic Plus, right? Because here's the thing, right? In Raid, Squishy could potentially ruin a week of Raid. If he brings in some complete idiot that he doesn't vet well, and, like, he could do severe damage to his guild and waste a ton of people's time.
Okay.
If you make friends with somebody and invite them to a key and they throw your key, okay, one key is done and then you move on and you never play with that guy again, right? Like, there is absolutely no reason to be picky or that selective with the people that you meet at M+, and you just need to do keys. And, like, okay, if you're somebody who thinks that networking in Mythic Plus is too hard, I have a challenge for you. Every single key that you do, pick the best person in that group and try and add them as a friend and do more keys. Every single key that you do. And I bet you will fill your friends list up. Is it going to be all of world-class all-star players? No, but I mean, you're probably not a world-class all-star player either. Like, I think it's just a little ridiculous that, and I don't know, like, this isn't me being, like, ego or whatever, but I literally did a pug series where I started off on a brand new druid and I pugged up to every key at a +10 or higher. Nobody was like, hey, that healer was kind of good. This guy is probably on average better than a healer than I get in a +8.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do another. No, like, nobody was doing that. Like, who are you waiting for? What healer are you You're saying you can never get into groups because you don't have a healer. Who were you waiting for? Timbermaw or Zalia to join your group? Then you'll send them a friend request. Like, who? Like, I'm like, I'm not trying to say that I'm playing like a monster, but, like, if you're not seeing me in your keys being like, hey, that that guy was kind of decent. Maybe I should invite him to a +9. Then who the heck are you inviting? Like, I feel like people just don't really pay attention or like want to put in effort, and they basically just want to be carried. And they're just like, oh, this guy is 300 score higher than me. I'm gonna send him a friend request. Like, you just have to just add people and see. Like, I don't know. I feel like Group Finder is an absolutely great place to meet people and make friends and play. You don't need to do 50 keys. Do you need to do 50 keys to find a team? Maybe, but getting a team is like fucking hard. You know, you could do 5 keys and probably find 2 or 3 people that are cool to play with. Like, people just don't put in the effort. Like, I'm sorry, but like, just do it. Like, just add people. Like, I don't understand. Like, what is like for people who say that the Group Finder isn't providing sufficient ways to meet friends? Are they saying that everybody in the group sucks, or like everybody that you're adding? Like, if people are still listening who are mad at my rant or whatever, write down in the comments like, what problems do you have with the Group Finder? Like, are you saying that everybody in every group that you have sucks? Are you saying that the people won't do more keys with you? Like, I get it. At the end of every key, you know, basically the only thing that happens is everyone says, you know, TYBB and they leave or whatever. But also that's because you do the same thing, right? Everybody does the same thing. Like, if you message them, hey, you were a really good healer. Hey, you did good damage. You want to do another key? Like, are they ignoring you? Like, I don't know. Like, what problems are people running into other than they just expect to find Ellismere to friend request in their 9 Grimbatol?
I have a question, bro.
Okay, you go first.
I have a quick question. TYBB?
Oh yeah, it was a joke that I used to have when I played on EU servers. At the end of every group, everyone just says TYBB, like thank you, bye-bye, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what they
Okay.
say at the end of a key. And they just
Okay, fair enough.
always say that, and then everyone just leaves.
I was
No
like, how
one-
many times have you
yeah.
actually heard that? That's new to me.
Oh,
but-
I think it was an EU thing. It was like
Got it.
an EU meme that I don't know.
Okay.
EU people write in the comments.
All right. That's all. Thank you.
Dude, I remember. I don't know if you guys remember this. I remember whenever we started. Whenever I started Titan Force podcast back in BFA, one of the first it had to be in the first 15 or 20 episodes, we started talking about like getting people in voice for keys. And I actually think that if you can convince people in your LFG keys to actually get into voice and like talk, that can actually help you create meaningful connections with these people as well, and kind of go beyond the scope of, you know, just doing that weekly key one time and actually starting to create meaningful connections with people, and starting to create new friends. Now, I understand that not everybody's interested in that. Some people are just like, you know, I'm just out here trying to get, I don't care about making new friends. But I do think that is like, if you want to continue to like grow your network of friends that you have playing World of Warcraft, getting people into voice is like a decent first step. And then like Grau said, if you meet somebody who is really good and you were already in voice with them, you're like, hey, you were actually sick, do you want to key another time? They're probably going to say yes. Like,
one thing I'll say is be careful on the first date. So as the official bench podcast social group finding interaction, I think, at least from my experience personally, people who want to get a Discord right away in Pugs, that's usually a little bit of a red flag to me. Like, if I just join a +11 Gribbitol and they're like, hey, here's the Discord server, I'm like, especially if I'm like already playing with other friends or hanging out or whatever.
I
However,
think that's the issue.
But what I will say though is, as soon as you get to that level where one key goes well, you time the 11, and then you say, hey, you want to do another key? Let's get in Discord. Like, I think I agree with Tettles' tip, but I would say as a suggestion, maybe not right away, maybe like on the second key. Because I think getting into basically, you know, every time you go into a Discord call, like of the first key that you do in Group Finder, there's just some guy who just is always hot micing and just always coughing. There's the 2 guys that never talk, and then there's the 1 guy with his baby screaming in the background. Like, that's just how every key goes if it's the first time. But if you vet them and you're like, hey, this guy seemed decent, like, let's play, that gets cut down a lot.
It can't be worse than what I deal with in the Destiny LFG group, man.
That's the LFG.
Is Destiny
Dude,
LFG really
I have-
bad?
No, it's great. I don't pug using like the in-game LFG. There's a Discord server called Destiny LFG. It's like, and I do 6-man raids. It's exactly what you said. There are 2 people with hot mics. You can hear everything in the background, including a TV. You have 2 people who are playing on a console, so they have the really shitty mic connection. Like, we're on Xbox Live in like 2010. Oh my god! But yeah,
Why do the people who hot mic always have a loud TV in the background? Like, they just, you know what I mean?
no, but in all seriousness, WoW is like the one game where voice chat is like not common, and it's really odd to me because every other game raids you can pug, and like you will probably get in a Discord call and need it, you know? So I do find that really odd as well.
I think I would say that if you actually get in voice, you can probably do like 2 key levels higher than if you're not in voice with the same people, like pretty easily. I think you get about two key levels worth of an advantage being in voice.
Something like that. I mean, your run will just be cleaner. Period.
Yeah.
Like having to guess when kicks are and all that, like what the route is.
You don't even need like some key general in your key like leading the entire thing. If somebody's just like, yeah, I'm kicking this next. Or then somebody's like, Shaman, can you stop this? It's like, it doesn't even have to be like insane. You could just be like, yo, can you stop this? Yo, somebody got kicked next.
We basically laid out the system. We'll probably eventually run out of ideas for episodes and make a whole episode into this, but we've literally laid out the entire system for you now. Step 1, do a bunch of keys in Group Finder. Step 2, every single time that you do a key, pick the best person in the group. No matter what, you have to do it. Add them, right? And ask them if they'll do more keys. And then when you do keys, say, hey, want a Discord ? And then there you go. And I bet your path to finding friends to do Mythic Plus will have accelerated tremendously.
All right, I think that's it. Concluding episode 20. Shout out the bench viewers. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.